A beautiful night of luminaries indeed. Back to you, Dr. Kendi. Thank you for taking the time to be here. I'll let the Rattler kick us off.
Appreciate it. Well, welcome, Doc.
Okay, Rattler.
Good to see you as always. I saw you had a post trying to help all of us struggle with and comprehend the significance of Donald Trump's and the Republican Party's repeated mythology, I don't know what the hell to call it, but around the eating of pets. I want you, if you wouldn't mind, just help us sort of see that, I think, in a much more grounded and concrete and really important way, because I think it's easy to make jokes and memes without assessing the impact that it may have on the greater community.
Well, I think it's part of a larger project to criminalize black people more broadly. But their specific target, obviously, were Haitian immigrants. And in Springfield, Ohio, you have longtime black residents who are also being sort of demonized and racially profiled, as a result of what they've said about those, people presumably eating pets. And so I just tried to show that when you demean one black group, what ultimately happens is you demean every black group. And I think it's important for us to not think, let's say if you are not a Haitian immigrant, but you're black, to think, no, that's just them. No, ultimately it's going to boomerang back to you.
That's real. That's real. We have that a lot in Florida, Ibram. I know you know that, but because of the immigrant community, the expanding Caribbean, Afro-Latino, Haitian community, so on and so forth, you will hear at the higher education level folks saying, I'm not, African American, I'm not black, I'm Haitian, or I'm this. And I think black people do this, American-born black folks do similarly. And I just thought your message was poignant because I always felt that if they're going after Haitians, they don't know the difference largely between any one of us.
Yeah.
It's not okay to go after Haitians, period, but certainly when you consider that this is an attack on all of us, that we all have to say something and do something about it.
And it's interesting because it just harkens me back to this speech that Malcolm X actually gave. I believe it was in 1962 after police sort of barged into the LA mosque and ended up killing some members of the nation. And he gave this sort of funeral speech. And during that funeral speech, that's when he's well known for saying the most disrespected person in America today is the black woman.
Yeah.
But in that speech, he also speaks to black people and says, who taught you to hate yourself? And I'm referencing that because, you can ask African Americans, well, who taught you to hate black immigrants?
Yeah.
Who you can ask black immigrants, who taught you to hate African Americans?
That's right.
And so what happens is you have different groups of black folks seeing other groups of black folks through the eyes of racist white people.
I love that.
And don't even know it.
Yeah.
That's real.
I think that's such a legitimate point. How have you found, because the last time you were in the news, we were all ready to come to your defense. How have you found navigating this space? Because it does feel like it is such a visceral attack. This kind of racial reckoning that mostly white-run newsrooms introduced. What we've actually witnessed is more of a hostile backlash, a swift and hostile backlash to that. So in this age of how to be an anti-racist and contributing what you can to society and I think all of us have been on the receiving end of such visceral attacks. How have you found navigating life personally, professionally, politically, all of it?
I mean, it's difficult.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's most difficult when I see attacks that those who are obviously trying to conserve racism create and launch. And people that I love sort of repeat those ideas, sort of not knowing it.
Oh my.
I think that's when it's sort of most painful. What's ironic even about comparing this to the last question about what's going on with those Haitian immigrants is you had this sort of viral series of sort of reports with no evidence. Like there was no evidence, right? And I think for those of us who been targeted in the media for doing something where there's no evidence, because apparently, like, our skin color is evidence enough. I mean, it becomes hard. Like, can you present some portion of evidence to substantiate this claim that's sort of more or less delegitimizing our work as a scholar, our work as an elected official, our work, as a commentator. And for typically black people, you don't need evidence. And I think that's what's incredibly painful for black people who are in the public light.
Yeah.
Ibram, first of all, I just want to tell you thank you. Because no matter what, any time that I've called on you, you've been there. And I wanted to start there because I think that is an essential component, an essential ingredient for community. And I'd love to know, in this era that we're in right now, given the quality of the work you do, the significance of the work you do, what our community can do to really come together to not only support you, to support each other in our collective advancement and liberation.
I really think we have to, I think, to support sort of my work or even others, I think we have to be more results oriented. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to be more sort of evidence based, going back to what I was just, talking about. And I'm saying that to say, even in my book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, I ended up defining an activist as someone with a record of power and policy change. So a person can't just say one day, I'm an activist.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right. What is your record? What organizations have you built? What institutions, have you created? What campaigns have you launched to, reduce levels of housing insecurity, in your community? And I think we have to be more outcome oriented, more results oriented, because especially in a moment in which those who are trying to conserve racism are so intent focused. Yeah. We have to be outcome focused.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of symbolism, right? And even when it comes to the presidency, we, have seen the election of President Barack Obama, and looking at that through the lens of policy, we can judge his presidency. I think at this point, for a lot of younger people, President Obama was the floor, not the ceiling. And so now younger people have a lot more demands of our leaders. We're beyond the role of symbolism. So I think that's so true. What is your prediction for what may happen in November and what this landscape might look like in this country? Because when he was elected, it was like, oh, we're post-racial now, which we all kind of laughed at that ridiculous notion of that. What might we see? What might await us under a president, Kamala Harris?
Well, it's interesting because many people have talked about the importance, obviously, of this election. And, as an historian, let me just say I can attest to that. I can't think of this election in 2024, particularly for black folks, without thinking of the election of 1864. And this was an election between a candidate who more or less planned to end the Civil War and pretty much re-enslave black people, and a candidate that presumed that he was going to continue the Civil War. I mean, it really is that stark, particularly when you look at the candidacy of Donald Trump and what he has planned, particularly for black folks. And so I think it's important for us to understand those stakes, especially when you look at some of the candidates who are sort of allying with Trump internationally, and when you look at what they've done when they've gotten a second term or when they've gotten a second presidency. This is a critical moment in the history of black life in this country and really in the history of the United States.